Hey, welcome everybody. Thanks for tuning in. We're going to get started in just a minute here, but hopefully you are ready to make some ice cream. And I want to start by explaining that we're not just making ice cream. We are making amazing ice cream. I mean, picture just the creamiest, most delicious ice cream that you can picture. So this is not your typical made-at-home ice cream. I do want to give a shout out to Thomas Keller. Thomas Keller is my own personal favorite chef. He runs the French Laundry out in Napa. He also has a restaurant there called Ad Hoc. This is actually the cookbook from Ad Hoc, and this is where we're going to be taking the recipe from for tonight. So this is Thomas Keller's vanilla ice cream, which, in the event that you were wondering, why are there so many egg yolks in this ice cream? It's because that is how Thomas Keller rolls. And when you've been in quarantine, as long as all of us have, you don't mess around with a subpar ice cream. You go straight for the good stuff. The first thing when we get started is going to be something we talked about last week, which was mise en place. Mise en place is a term for everything in its place. And if you're going to start cooking, you have to be organized. So, I've got my large saucepan. It really doesn't matter how big it is as long as it can fit your 4 cups of liquid. So I've got my saucepan. In here, I have my milk and my cream. Now the recipe that we're using calls for 2 cups of whole milk and then 2 cups of heavy cream. Now some of you might be wondering, can I use low-fat milk or reduced-fat milk? Yes, you can. However, it's just not going to be as rich in the end. So I'm recommending, if you have it, whole milk. Now if you have heavy cream and then just 2% milk, then do about 1.5 cups 2% and then 2.5 cups heavy cream. You need 4 cups total. So I'm going to go ahead and take this 4 cups of liquid and I'm going to pour it into my saucepan. So there we go, into the saucepan, nice and easy. And you have already completed your first step. And you're not even breaking a sweat yet. So we're off to a good start. Okay, I'm going to set this to the side. Now, tonight, I'm going to be demonstrating how to make a vanilla ice cream. Some of you out there are big fans of chocolate ice cream, and that is also a favorite of mine. We're not making that tonight, but just so you know, this exact same recipe is what you would use, except instead of vanilla beans or vanilla extract, whatever you're using, you would use a melted bar of chocolate. So if you send me an email, I'll give you more specifics on that. But vanilla is what we're making tonight, and it's going to be a lovely vanilla. It's really going to go great for ice cream sundaes, if that is your thing. What I have here are 2 whole vanilla beans. I'm just going to be using one of them. And this came from Colonel D's Spices. Again, you can order this online from Colonel D. I'm a big fan of their spices. I'm also a big fan of the vanilla beans. They're just amazing. These go great with French toast as well. There's a video on the YouTube channel about that you can check out. So I'm going to grab my vanilla bean. Then, because it's a whole vanilla bean, now if you're using extract, don't worry, we'll get to that. The vanilla bean, you're going to have to cut this open, and this is where I want you to be careful. So I'm recommending a paring knife, which is a knife with a shorter blade. And you're basically going to cut almost like an incision all along the vanilla bean. So I've got a cutting board here, and I'm going to place the vanilla bean down and slowly cut right down the vanilla bean. I'm being careful though, knowing where my fingers are the entire time. So cutting down the vanilla bean, and now I've made the incision all the way down, so I'm actually able at this point to open the vanilla bean. This is where I want you to go ahead and turn on the heat. We're going to turn on our heat to medium-high. So I've got my medium-high heat going. We're going to basically bring this to a simmer. So we want it to not boil, but come fairly close to that. Okay, while this is heating up, I'm going to take that same paring knife that I had. And using the tip of the knife, I am actually going to open up this vanilla bean a little bit more. And then I'm going to take the knife and scrape all the way down. The idea is that inside this vanilla bean are lots and lots of little seeds, very little black seeds, and I want to scrape them into my pot. So here's the knife, Again, I'm doing this carefully, and I'm making sure not to cut myself in the process. I'm going to go ahead and cut this vanilla bean just a little bit more. Make sure it's all the way cut through. And then, with the knife, carefully, I'm going to scrape. And as you do, you will notice that these black flecks, if you look at my knife there, these black flecks of vanilla are what's falling in here. And that is where the flavoring is. You want to make sure to get those out. Now, don't fret about getting each and every one perfectly, because we're actually going to throw this entire vanilla bean into this mixture. So I'm scraping now. I've opened the vanilla bean for the most part. I'm scraping, and there we go. Okay, so that's all scraped. I've actually got some on my hands, so I'm just going to kind of do that over the saucepan. Take the entire vanilla bean now and place it in the saucepan. I actually use it to stir around just a little bit. Now, you are ready to mix together some sugar. Okay, for this recipe, you're going to be using 3/4 of a cup of sugar plus 2 tablespoons. So 3/4 plus 2 tablespoons. But here's how I actually want you to divide it. Get your sugar and start with a 1/2 cup. So if you already measured out your sugar, that's fine. Take that full amount you measured out and remove 6 tablespoons. I want you to end up with 6 tablespoons in one container and a 1/2 cup in another container. So 4 tablespoons is about 1/4 of a cup. So I've got a 1/2 cup of sugar and 6 tablespoons of sugar. And this will be all the sugar I put in. So I'm not going crazy on the sugar because I want that vanilla to speak for itself. What I'm going to do is take this 1/2 cup and I'm just going to sprinkle it over the top of my mixture, just like this. Sprinkling it over the top. And what we want is for this mixture, I've got some sugar stuck at the bottom here. We want the milk mixture to get hot enough to cause the sugar to dissolve. You don't want to have gritty sugar particles in your ice cream. So that's why we're heating it in this first step. So I've got a whisk. You could also use a spoon for this part, either or. And I'm just going to whisk this together to make sure that it gets nice and hot and the temperature that I need. Now, while that's going, it is time to move on to our next step. So just to recap, I've got 2 cups of whole milk, 2 cups of heavy cream in the saucepan. 1 entire vanilla bean, cut, seeds out, in the saucepan. Okay, what if you're using vanilla extract? This is where the amount is kind of up to you. Some people say that 2 teaspoons is the equivalent. Some people say use a tablespoon. I would, just to be safe and make sure you've got enough vanilla flavor, I would use a tablespoon. If you're worried about that being too much, go a little bit less. But you do want that vanilla flavor to come through in this ice cream. This is when you would go ahead and add that extract. So make sure that you have a flavoring in this milk. So we've got that, then we have a 1/2 cup of sugar. While this is coming to a simmer, which doesn't take too long, by the way, I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I have my next step ready. Hopefully you have gone ahead and done the hard part, which is separate the yolks from the whites. Now, if you haven't done that, this is the time to actually do that. This can get kind of tricky and a little bit messy, so feel free to ask for help from someone in your house. But basically, you're going to have 2 bowls. In one bowl, you crack the egg and hold it over while you separate the yolk. Some people do this with the shell. I like to do it with my 2 hands. So I crack the egg into my hand, I open my fingers a little bit, and I let the white just fall through. Then you plop the egg yolk into this bowl. And people, this is a lot of egg yolks. We are using 10 egg yolks. You're probably thinking, what do I do with all these whites? Do I throw them away? I'm advising that you not throw them away. I'm advising that you save them. Put them in an airtight container, throw them in your fridge, and here's why. There is a lot that you can do with egg whites. In fact, just Google what to do with leftover egg whites. One of my personal favorites, candied pecans. Candied pecans take an egg white to get the sugar mixture to stick. It's a great way to use up egg whites. People use them in meringue. People use them in all kinds of different preparation. So do not throw them away. You can also freeze them. So in here I've got 10 egg whites. And if you remember, I have my remaining 6 tablespoons of sugar. I am actually going to add the sugar to the egg yolks. I think I might have said whites a moment ago, but yolks. So take your 6 tablespoons, sprinkle it on top like this, and you are actually going to whisk this together. However, I'm noticing that my mixture is about to come to a simmer, so I'm going to give it another stir. You do not want it to boil, so make sure you don't let it boil. Now, 6 tablespoons of sugar, 10 egg yolks. That's quite a mixture. I want you to take a whisk and begin mixing this together like so. Immediately, you will see the yolks and the sugar come together, but you are not finished. You need to give this a good whisk until it looks fully incorporated. So, you're whisking, definitely put a little force behind it, so much so that your arms are going to get a little tired, and you want a good mixture here. Basically, you should be able to see, when you lift your whisk, a trail, a fairly thin, smooth trail of egg and sugar. And that's what I'm going for. So I've got 10 egg yolks, I've got 6 tablespoons of sugar, and I have a mixture that is just about to simmer. There's only one other thing I want you to get for right now, and that is a measuring cup. Preferably one that is about a ½ cup in size. This is what we're going to use to get that hot liquid into these eggs. But please wait until I show you how to do that. Right now, I'm going to grab a trivet here so that I can take this container off of the heat once it's ready, which looks like it's going to be any minute now. And what we're going to do is slowly incorporate the hot cream mixture into our egg yolks. Now, if you've never done something like this before, please know it is very important to go slowly. What you're doing is called tempering the eggs. You're basically slowly bringing them to the temperature of the liquid. If we did this all at once, we would have scrambled egg yolks. And nobody wants scrambled egg yolk ice cream. To prove that theory, turn to someone in your kitchen and say, "Would you like some scrambled egg yolk ice cream?" If that person says yes, then I advise you run, because nobody in their right mind would want that. Okay, so I've got my egg yolks, I've got my sugar, I've stirred it up, I'm in good shape, and my mixture is starting to let off a good deal of steam. It has not yet boiled, but I can notice that there's almost a skim or skin that is forming on the surface. I can also see that in spots it is just beginning to boil. So this has reached the level of what we would call a simmer. Not incredibly hot, not boiling. It's probably somewhere in that 180 degree range or so. So I'm going to turn my burner off. I'm going to take my saucepan. Now be careful, if you need oven mitts or something, use those. And I'm going to remove it to this trivet. Now, at this point, you are going to want to remove, if you had it in there, the vanilla bean itself, because you don't actually want that vanilla bean to end up in your final mixture. So this may involve a little bit of poking around. I've got my knife here. So I just put my knife in. I found the vanilla bean, and I'm going to pull it out of the mixture. If you were not in a rush, you could leave this vanilla bean in the mixture a little while longer. The more the vanilla bean sits, the more flavor it's going to impart. I'm not too worried because there's still a lot of vanilla seeds in this mixture. So I'm going to set the vanilla bean off to the side. And now what I'm going to do is take my half cup measurement. With that half cup measurement, I'm going to scoop up a little bit of this hot mixture. Then, using my dominant hand, I am going to begin whisking. I'll move this so you can see it a little bit better, hopefully. And I am going to slowly, just slowly begin dribbling this mixture into the egg yolk mixture. Again, do not go quickly, couple drops at a time. We'll begin speeding it up once we get going. I'm whisking the entire time. So I'm whisking, and there go a couple drops, and then I'm going to stop, and I'm going to keep whisking. There's a couple more drops, a little bit more, and I'm going to stop. Do not go fast. This is not a race. So a little bit more, and that was so far a fourth of a cup. So I'm going to pause in my whisking, scoop up a little bit more, and continue whisking. And this is where you can actually start speeding up just a tad. Again, don't go crazy, but speeding up a tad isn't going to hurt at this point. So I'm dribbling it in, I'm dribbling it in. Those of you who have made a vinaigrette before, this is the same technique when you add your oil. So you would have your vinegar and probably your Dijon mustard, and you start whisking it really hard. You only want to add your olive oil a drop at a time until it begins to combine. Here though, we are heating up the eggs slowly. So you'll notice that I filled it up again, and that time I went a little bit faster. I'm getting to the point where I'm not as worried. My egg mixture is becoming a little bit more liquid, and I'm just whisking it in, and so on and so forth. We are eventually going to get to the point where I am just going to be pouring this mixture in. So here we go, a little bit more. By now, I have added just over a cup of the liquid mixture, which means there is about a cup left to add. I'm sorry, 3 cups left. I'm whisking, I'm pouring, and I'm getting to the point now where I'm feeling a little bit better about this mixture. So, I actually still have over here the container that I used from the original milk. It's a pretty good container. So I'm not too worried about it overheating with the simmering liquid. So I am actually going to carefully pour this liquid into this container. And I'm doing that because this container has a much better pour spout than my entire saucepan does. So I'm just going to pour this over. And this is going to help me pour it into the egg mixture quite a bit better. So I'm going to keep whisking. I'm going to grab this container with my other hand. Now I am ready to go the distance. In we go. Nice steady stream. I'm not being too careful, but I'm also not just dumping the liquid in. So I'm pouring the rest of the liquid in, getting it nice, good consistency, and so on. I have added, about 3 cups of liquid total so far. So this is the final cup to bring it to that final consistency. Now, our ice cream is not done yet. Do not get excited. Do not eat this. We still have to cook the mixture. So, I have now added all of my liquid to the eggs. The top is going to look pretty foamy. I've actually got some vanilla beans still in here, so I'm going to try and get some of those out. You cannot let this vanilla go to waste. There we go. This mixture, now that I've gotten it all incorporated with the eggs, is going to go directly back into that same saucepan that we had. So I've kept the saucepan here. I'm going to pour this mixture in, and now it is already going to look kind of like a yellow, creamy, beautiful kind of texture. Just wait till we start cooking this. Once we get this back over heat, it is going to thicken and become gorgeous. But a word of caution, once it starts to thicken, it will thicken quickly, and we got to yank this sucker off the heat. So this is when I want you to prepare what is called an ice bath. An ice bath is the concept of taking a larger container filled with about halfway of ice, and then putting a smaller container inside of that, then adding a little bit of water, so that basically your middle container is sitting in ice water. Let me show you what I mean. I have a pot here that is filled, if you can kind of see, with ice. Inside of this pot, I'm going to place this bowl. Before I do that, I'm going to pour a little bit of water in here. So I've got some water. The trick is this. Once you have your water and your ice, you want to make sure that the level is not too high. Because if that level is too high, the water would spill over into your second bowl, and that is a big, big no-no. We don't want scrambled egg ice cream, and we don't want water ice cream. So, take the bowl and test it out. Place it inside. Make sure, you can kind of see what I've got going on here, it's kind of hard, but I've got this bowl, the water is coming up about 1/3 of the way, so that's perfect. I'm going to go ahead and place this within easy reach of my workstation. So I'm going to place this right here where I can access it quite easily. And what I'm about to do is place the saucepan back onto the heat. Now I'm actually only going to turn it on medium heat. I don't want to go too crazy. You can go ahead and whisk this just a little bit, because what you'll find is that the edges of your saucepan still have some of that vanilla bean seed residue. So I'm scraping that off just a little bit, and then I'm whisking. However, I am not going to whisk too long, because soon I'm going to switch to a spoon or a spatula. I have this wooden spoon here, and I kind of like that look of this, so I'm going to use this. And I'm going to use this to begin stirring the mixture around momentarily. Now, let me explain why this part is important. It is important that you stay vigilant and focus on this mixture. You are creating the custard base for this ice cream right now. You're also cooking the egg yolks. You're basically putting together the components for the ice cream to become thick, luscious, creamy, and delicious. But I caution you, if you take your eyes off of this, or if you walk off to go watch a YouTube video and come back, it will be too late. And the mixture will have boiled, and you will have, you guessed it, scrambled egg ice cream. So, we want to catch this right before it boils, and we also don't want a vigorous simmer. As soon as it starts simmering, this mixture will begin to thicken. And we're using our spoon or spatula as the indicator spoon. If this mixture coats the spoon with a thick coating of custard, you know that it's done, and you're going to immediately remove it and pour it directly into your ice bath. So that's kind of my goal. And by the way, you have to kind of do it by sight. It's not a matter of how long it takes, because every cooking device is different. If you're using gas versus electric, I'm using an induction burner right here, so it's kind of in between the two in terms of time. Sometimes this takes 10 minutes. Sometimes it's taken as quick as 5. Once it actually took 15 minutes because the mixture had cooled so much. Nonetheless, remain vigilant. Your job as the cook, as the, dare we say, pastry chef, since we're making ice cream, is to make sure that you properly create the ice cream. Now, here's another kind of, I guess, cheat to know that you're almost close. When you see steam begin to rise off the top of the ice cream, you are almost there, and you may want to turn your heat down just a tad. So, while I'm doing this, I am looking for steam, and I am now switching to my spoon. I'm using my spoon to stir the sides and also to make sure that this mixture doesn't coat the bottom. If you're not constantly scraping the bottom, it has been known to coat the bottom, and the downside there is that's less ice cream for you in the end. So I'm scraping this all together as I'm going. And while I'm doing this, let me give you a couple pointers for the ice cream itself. First is this: patience. Why do I mean patience? What we are creating tonight is what's called an ice cream base. The base is not the finished product. You are going to be tempted, and I know you will be tempted because I am tempted every time I make it, to try and finish this ice cream tonight. That would be a mistake. This is not properly chilled, and you will end up with an inferior product. But if you can be patient and wait until tomorrow, you could even do it tomorrow morning. But if you wait until this has sat in the fridge overnight, then you will have a chilled ice cream base. Then, if you can kind of see behind me here, if you have an ice cream maker like this one, that's when you would pour the base into the ice cream maker. But do not fret. If you do not have an ice cream maker, all is not lost. I actually checked Amazon the other day for ice cream makers, and most of them were sold out because everybody's at home making their own ice cream during this time. There are other methods, and they're good methods too. Here's a really easy one. Tomorrow morning, you wake up, this mixture has been in the fridge overnight. Take it in its whole container and stick it in your freezer. Then set your timer. Every 45 minutes or an hour, take the container out of the freezer and give it a good stir. The edges will have frozen, but the center will still be liquid. And you're churning the ice cream hourly, mixing it together, put it back in the freezer. 45 minutes later, mix it together, put it back in the freezer. Just set a timer. Most of us are home during the day anyway, so you've got nothing else to do except for a bunch of Zoom calls, I'm sure. But try that as a method. If you are one of the impatient ones, and we all know the impatient ones, we've all been there, I have a really fun method for you to try. Divide this mixture into 2 good quality freezer bags, maybe quart-size freezer bags. Take that quart-size freezer bag and put it inside of a gallon-size bag. Fill the bag with ice. Then sprinkle a teaspoon of salt on top of the ice. The salt will actually lower the freezing temperature of the ice. Seal the bag and shake it. I kid you not, shake it. Keep shaking it. Do not stop shaking it. Take a break, shake it some more. Shake it some more. And you will actually find that that will make ice cream in a bag. My kids and I have tried this. It works. It's fun. It's entertaining. And it also gives your arms a little bit of a workout. Okay, my mixture is not yet simmering. It's been a few minutes, but I can tell by the surface that a few bubbles are starting to form. So I know I'm getting there, and I know that it's pretty soon going to come together. Once that heat begins to rise from the surface, which I'm placing my hand right over the surface and I can feel the steam coming off, once you get a visual on that steam, that's when you need to watch this very closely. That custard is going to form quickly, and once it forms, you are off to the races. Let me add another note here. Those of you who wish to replicate this with chocolate. If you're doing chocolate, skip the vanilla bean. And at the very start, melt a bar of chocolate. Try to get really good quality chocolate. I would recommend something that is at least 60% cacao or 60% dark. Melt it over low heat and then mix it in with the initial milk and cream. And then everything else is the same. The sugar is the same, the egg yolks is the same, this process is the same, and you are good to go. Some of you might wonder, are there any other methods? I've got a really fun one for you, especially once summertime comes along. Mint ice cream. Growing up as a kid, mint chocolate chip was my absolute favorite ice cream. I specifically liked it because of the color green. However, as we know, true mint ice cream is actually not green. Skip the vanilla bean. Take some mint leaves, chop them up, throw them in this mixture while everything is simmering at the beginning, then strain them out using just a typical strainer before you add them to the eggs. And you have mint ice cream. I know others of you were asking about add-ins. What else can you put in here? I love to add pecans to my vanilla ice cream. Some of you might want to add chocolate chips. That's a big favorite. When to do that? The time to do that is when you're churning the ice cream. So if you're using the ice cream maker, then you would do that. I'm checking my mixture here. I'm going to go ahead and use a whisk again a little bit. You would do that when you pour it into the ice cream machine. If you're churning by hand, you would go ahead and put them in before it goes in the freezer and then just mix it all together. For many of you, you'll be doing this for ice cream sundaes. So you'll be adding your toppings when you're actually eating the ice cream. And that's when it's fun to make your own whipped cream with any leftover heavy cream. Just throw it in a mixer, a stand mixer, add a little bit of sugar, and let it go on high. Add some chocolate, add a cherry, and you are good to go. All right, my ice cream is just about finished. I'm going to remove it from the heat. And I am immediately, after I give it kind of one more stir here, I am immediately going to move it to my ice bath. So I'm going to pour it in here. And I'm doing this quickly so that it cools down in a timely fashion. I'm going to move this out of the way. Now, the only other component to the recipe is a pinch of salt. And by pinch of salt, I mean just that. Not a teaspoon, not a half teaspoon, not even a fourth of a teaspoon. Just take your 2 fingers and pinch the salt and sprinkle it on top like so. That's it. I am now going to take my spoon and carefully begin stirring the ice cream. It is going to start cooling down immediately. So I'm cooling this. I'm going to go ahead and move this so you can see a little bit better. I'm going to stir and let it cool. But I'm also watching that water level in my ice bath. I do not want that water to creep inside this ice cream. But you'll see as I'm doing this that the steam is just coming right off of this and it's cooling down very quickly. And that is what we want. Keep doing this, stirring it periodically until the ice cream is room temperature or colder. Once it's room temperature or colder, cover this bowl and put it straight in your fridge and leave it. Unless you're super tempted to just stick a spoon in it and try a little bit, in which case I highly recommend it. But ladies and gentlemen, with nothing more than some egg yolks, some milk, cream, sugar, a vanilla bean, and a pinch of salt, you have made your very own ice cream. And I'll give you one final warning. Once you start eating ice cream this good that you made yourself, you are going to be tempted to make a lot of ice cream. And that's why it's always a good idea to share with your family, maybe make some for neighbors down the street, maybe make some for someone who you know just needs a little pick-me-up at the end of the day. And there you have it, homemade ice cream via Thomas Keller's recipe. Yes.
So once this gets to room temperature, do we so we put it in a different container and then put it in the fridge?
Yeah, I would actually, I mean, it depends on your preference, but you could actually leave it in this same container. So mine is just in a glass bowl.
Okay.
I would just cover that bowl, stick it in the fridge.
For how long?
For at least 8 hours. It's best if you wait for 12 hours.
Okay.
You want to make sure it's really nice and chilled before you actually do the next step.
And then do we put it in the freezer at any point, or just like leave it in the refrigerator?
Okay, great question. So this depends on the method you're using to make the ice cream. If you're using that bag method I talked about, which by the way, you can see that online, there's some great videos about that.
Okay.
Then you would just put it in the freezer after you've done all the shaking. If you're using an ice cream maker like this, which actually churns the ice cream, the piece of this that goes in the center should go in your freezer when this goes in your fridge, because it needs to freeze for 12 hours. It has liquid in the inside of it. Then, when you turn this on, pour the ice cream in and it will churn itself. Once it looks like soft serve ice cream, that's when you put it in a container, stick it in the freezer. And I would actually freeze it for another 4 hours at least. It will continue to get harder the longer it stays in the freezer. So if you like the soft serve consistency, eat it then. Otherwise, go from there. Technically, this can stay in your freezer for a week or two. I have never known it to last that long before it's gone. So that's up to you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Should we stir it until it's room temperature continuously?
What I would do, don't stir it continuously. Stir it every minute or two. And then once it gets a little cooler, maybe every 5 minutes, you don't need to stand here the whole time. I usually leave mine in here for up to about an hour or so. And I'll just come back and give it a stir and give it a stir. The stirring is most important when it first goes in. Once you add that salt. Otherwise, you can just let it sit here for a few minutes and add more. And actually, I'm already noticing that my bowl is sinking now because the ice is melting. So I'm actually going to take this out for a second. And I'm going to pour some of my water back into this other container. And I'm doing that because the last thing that I want is water to get into this ice cream. So I'm going to put this container back in. Now we're in good shape. And I'm going to give it another stir. And it's just going to sit here. And you'll notice that the ice cream is very yellow. And that's just because of the egg yolks. Homemade ice cream with egg yolks, it's going to have a yellowish look unless you go with chocolate. So people might be like, why is the vanilla ice cream not pure white? Because it is rich and decadent thanks to the egg yolks. So that's why, in case people are wondering. You'll find ice cream recipes online that just use milk, cream, and sugar and things like that. They are not as rich, not as lovely. Being from Cincinnati, I'm a huge fan of Grater's ice cream. This is as close as I can get to that Grater's slow-churned, creamy goodness. So starting with this as a base, that's when you can really get experimental. Maybe this summer, when the black raspberries are ripe, you want to try your hand at black raspberry chip homemade ice cream. Use this base. Then what I would do is make a simple syrup out of those black raspberries. A simple syrup is where you crush the raspberries with a little sugar and a little water and you cook it all together. And then you would pour that and mix that in while the ice cream is churning. That would be delicious. I'm already thinking that's a good idea. I should try that soon. Any other questions? Well, in that case, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining the CHCA Remote Teaching Kitchen. I would love to see pictures of your ice cream. Oh yeah, but if you post your pictures on social media, use hashtag CHCA Virtual Kitchen or email them to teaching.kitchen@chca-oh.org. We would love to see your pictures. Give us the pictures with all your toppings. Give us pictures of the process. Show us what the final result looks like, and would love to have that. I saw there was another question, so what was that?
Yeah, the question is after this, like what temperature us to take it out from this ice bath again?
I'd say anything under 70 degrees. I would take it to about 70, and really, honestly, you're safe under 80. The only reason that you don't want it to be hot when it goes in the fridge is because the condensation will fall back on it, and then you have a layer of water on top. As long as it's 70 degrees or colder, put a lid on it, stick it in the fridge.
Okay. So when we put it on the fridge, we put it on the freezer or the other side?
Yeah, don't put it in the freezer yet. Let it go in the fridge for at least 8 hours so that it's nice and cold before you do anything with the freezer.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you very much. We will look forward for tomorrow then.
Yeah, that's the thing. And by the way, once it's ready and done, you will see it was worth the wait. It is absolutely delicious ice cream. So again, thank you everybody. Glad you could tune in, and hopefully we'll see you next week. I will let you know on Monday what that class will be. If this is your first Teaching Kitchen class and you are not on the email list, send me an email. Again, teaching.kitchen@chca-oh.org, and I will add you to that list so you will get our weekly updates about what we're making and the recipes, the ingredients, and all of that. But thanks again for joining us, and have fun eating delicious ice cream.